right, man. I think we're good to go.
All right.
Welcome to Tail Chase. On this episode, I am sitting down with my good friend, Christopher Lee. Graham chose to skip out on our little adventure this weekend, so he's not here. He didn't get to be a part of this. He missed all the fun.
It was a good weekend, man.
Yes, it was.
It was pretty wild.
Yeah, so we've been talking about doing a float, which I think even maybe 2 episodes ago you can hear me and Graham talking about doing a float down on the 11 point, and he did a little trip down there with his girlfriend and did some fly fishing down there. Got skunked. And so my goal was to not get skunked. And we planned this trip for this weekend, and he had some stuff come up. And
As it happens.
Yeah. Wasn't able to make it. So you and Jim Krieger, falconer from down around Springfield, came with me, and we had a good time. It was my first time ever really doing any kind of more than about 20-minute float, and we did an overnight. It was quite an adventure. It was not what I expected. I've had this canoe sitting in my driveway for the better part of 2 years and haven't been able to take it out. Got it all loaded down. And it was quite loaded down, and boy, it was I mean I've seen some of the rivers down around here. It was like way rockier and like actual like riffles and stuff that you're having to pick your way down.
Yeah.
And try and avoid rocks.
Yeah.
But we had a big, I don't know, what is that canoe, like 16 foot probably?
I think it's 14 foot.
14?
I think. Yeah, that's
Okay.
pretty typical. I've floated rivers before. I floated the Caw a couple times, and that's it's pretty slow meandering. A few little ripples here and there, so that's kind of what I was expecting, especially for, river in the Midwest. But it got pretty hairy there a couple times.
Yeah. Almost capsized, probably 4 times.
Yeah, at least.
And the worst one, we're coming into this ripple, and it looks like it's not going to be that much of a problem, but it was the first one that was kind of shallow that we had hit, and there were like bowling ball sized rocks.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're going down the middle of it, and just bang, we hit into something solid and about throws us both out of the boat, because the river's pretty fast. It is a pretty quick moving river, and then it swings the boat around sideways in the current, and we're banging off of rocks unpredictably that we can't see. And so we kind of both lean upstream so that we can keep the boat from tipping. And when we did that, we both leaned a little bit too much and started lipping water over the canoe.
Yeah, I mean,
and then we right as I was leaning out, you did the same thing. We both leaned downstream and planted and got it stopped.
Yeah.
And then we're able to work it around the right way after you dropped your paddle.
Yeah.
And Jim was ahead of us. And
thank God for Jim being downstream, because that would have made things, way more intense, being one paddle down, because he caught it. I mean, he was 100 yards ahead of us before he caught it. Yeah. And, but yeah, I mean, we were both, my waist was over the edge of the boat, leaning upstream, and that was the only thing we could do to keep from tipping, because we were coming at that thing so fast. Yeah, it was crazy, and really a cold river too, which is nice, like, because it was pretty hot during the day, but especially if there was any kind of ripple or anything, that whatever effect that it has on the air, man, you hit those ripples and it dropped the air temperature by 10 plus degrees. And what was where we put in at Greer? Yeah, I mean, we got there and it was warm, it was we were unloading, and I was already sweating, and I'm like, man, this is gonna be a long weekend. But as soon as you touch that water, you realize that it's it was cold. It was like getting in a bathtub of cold water. It was surprising. Yes, it was, and pleasantly so. It was like, oh man, at first we're like, oh, this is going to be a little rough because we're all wet wading. Getting in the river without any waders on, and
quickly you realize like, oh yeah, you acclimate to it, and that's what you want. You don't want it being warm because then you don't actually cool off when you're in the water.
Yeah.
But for those of you who don't know who Chris is, he's a falconer from Kansas. I think I met you, was it the first time at NAFA last year?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think we had talked on Facebook some. And yeah, just really hit it off and had a great time at NAFA for the short time that I was there, and then got together again further on through the season when you guys threw that Kansas-Oklahoma meet down in the Flint Hills.
Yep.
And had a great time that night too. And I whenever we were putting this together, I was like, I wonder if Chris would like to come, if this would be something that he'd like to do. And so I messaged you, not really thinking that you were actually gonna come and do it, because it's like 6 hours for you, 6 hour drive down here. And I was like, man, that's a long way to go just to float a river for a couple days. But it worked out well because I'm halfway from where the river's at between you. So you just came and crashed at my place, and it made it a little bit easier on you. And it was great having you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you inviting me over, man. I mean, I've like I said, I've floated before, but I've never caught trout. I've Graham introduced me to fly fishing, kind of taught me how to cast a little bit, and I'm not blaming him for my bad casting, but he's the one that kind of showed me, some pointers. But I was really excited, and I appreciate you having me over.
Yeah, it was a good time, man, and I definitely am glad. I think I mentioned it to you that you knew how to handle a boat. I've been in kayaks and canoes a fair bit, but there's always like that refresher, and it took me a little bit to remember, oh yeah, this is what you do here, this is what you do there. And that freaking canoe with all that weight that we had and the two of us, and it turned like a dang battleship. We were having to powerhouse that thing to try and get it to move at all if there was any kind of current, because we were just getting tossed around because of all the momentum of that thing. And yeah, there were some hairy moments, to say the least. But let's see, was the first fish that we caught, was it the one that I caught on the fly? On the streamer, the first trout. You caught two little, I don't even know what species they are. Some little minnow that's in there.
They weren't that. They were like 4 inches. They weren't that little. But yeah. So you showed me how to fish with those nymphs, and I got two little 3.5 inch, 4 inch long fish, and I was all proud about it. I was trying to show off, and I didn't get any credit for it. But yeah, so we snagged those, and then we were fishing a little ripple, and I moved upstream, and I was kind of out in the water, so the water's moving fast, up against me, and I didn't hear anything, but I came back, to where you and Jim are fishing, and you're like, I caught a fish, and I thought you were full of it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so how'd that go? What were you using?
Little like crawdad type pattern streamer. We've had some pretty good luck fishing the Niangua with those when me and Graham have gone in the past, and just casting it right directly across stream from me, and then letting it kind of drift down a little bit, and then kind of swing it through the current. So as the tension of the line reaches the streamer from your pole, it kind of lifts that streamer up through the water current, or not water current, water column, and for whatever reason, that seems to be a pretty effective presentation for them. That I've caught a handful of fish doing that, and that was the first one that I caught, and then you caught one on spinning like a spin caster reel and rod right at the head of a ripple.
Yeah.
And kind of a tricky one.
Yeah.
And like you weren't expecting to hook into something, you cast, one last cast, because it was where that spring fed into the river, which was supposed to be a good spot, and you hook into it just as we're getting ready to go into the ripple, and I'm trying to backpedal, but I didn't get caught us into the current, and started pulling us down the ripple, so I'm trying to pilot
backwards.
it. Yeah, because I did get it spun around.
Yeah.
so that you could fight the fish.
Yeah.
And then we're going down the ripple backwards, and I'm just trying to keep us off the trees and the rocks and everything
And
else.
you did a very good job because we didn't die.
And we landed the fish.
And we landed the fish.
Which
Yeah.
it was pretty awesome. Yeah, we get to the base of the ripple, and Jim had gone down ahead of us, and we're like, "Got one." He's like, "What?" Like, yeah, we hooked into it right at the head of the ripple, and then rode it on down.
Yeah. That was pretty insane. I mean, thankfully you were able to handle that boat by yourself because I was too excited because I seen that it was a trout, and I was just like, I'm just gonna land this fish. Like, we'll be all right. And thankfully you handled that well enough to keep us alive and not, flipping the boat.
Yeah,
That was pretty cool.
it worked out. That was fun, and I think that was the last fish we caught the first day, and then kind of had a little bit of trouble finding somewhere to camp.
Yeah.
and ended up having to go a little bit further down the river than we intended. And looking back, I think I would have spent more time in the section that we floated the first 2/3 of the first day, and fished some more of those spots more thoroughly. Although we did catch fish on down, but those were the areas that were more dynamic, fun to fish trout spots.
Yeah, it's supposed to be more prime trout there too, right? It was a larger bag or larger limit. Not larger limit, I'm sorry, larger size limit or whatever.
Yeah, so you can't take anything under 18 inches in the blue ribbon section.
Okay.
So it'd have to be a pretty sizable fish for you to keep it. It's mostly a catch and release program up there. And then once you get down past Turner Mill, I think is the cutoff point. If it's not there, it's close to it, where it switches to you can keep rainbows of any size and browns under 15 inches, which we ended up going past Turner Mill, which is about the halfway point for us the first night to find a campsite.
Yeah.
Because we'd see a good spot and looks like, oh man, there's so much brush and stuff, because we were all three of us camping in hammocks, so we had to be a little bit picky as to where we were gonna be, and then come to this spot, we're like, oh man, this looks perfect, and then Jim gets out and we're kind of sitting there in the back eddy waiting to see, and he's like, there's people right across where we just couldn't see. So we went on down and ended up finding this little gravel bar kind of at the base of this ripple and this curve in the river, with this beautiful bluff across from us, a little cave up on this cliff.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Just downstream, and ended up finding enough trees to make it work right there with the hammocks, and carved out a really nice little campsite and cooked dinner that night, and just sat around and talked for a while, all exhausted from being out in the sun and fishing. And Jim didn't catch anything that day. And then got up this morning, fried up some bacon and some eggs and some breakfast sausage. And
go
ahead.
You're getting a little ahead of yourself. We got up this morning, Jim was fishing, and then I got up there, I seen he was fishing. I'm like, I'm just gonna throw a line, just to see what happens. And I threw it down towards the little pool at the bottom of the ripples, and second cast caught another fish, another trout.
Yes, that's
on my
right.
spinning rod.
That's right.
But,
reeled one in, and we were in the section that we were able to keep that, so we bonked that one and turned that into breakfast too. And that was so good. We cooked that in the bacon fat, and oh man, that may have been the best trout I've ever had, fresh out of the river. Good. Oh, it was so good.
Yeah.
So good. I guess we skipped over some stuff that happened that night too. So Jim went to bed, and you and I stayed up and made s'mores with Reese's peanut butter cups instead of chocolate. Yeah. Which, if you haven't tried that, I'm telling you, it's the craze that's going to sweep the nation.
I'll never use Hershey's again.
Oh man, it was so good, so good. And then you went to bed, and I shortly followed you. I had to toast my marshmallow and eat the s'more. Yeah. And in the middle of the night, I heard something crawling real close. I had heard shortly after I went to bed. I heard raccoons getting into the stuff that we had
left out, which wasn't much. It was a couple corn cobs that ended up not working out for us to eat, and they made off with them, and I knew that was going on. I was like, whatever, I can tell that's raccoons. But then I heard something crawling through the brush fairly close to my feet where I was hanging up, and I was like, I don't like that. So I hollered at him, and you woke up. You're like, is everything all right?
Yeah.
You good?
Well, hey, get out of here. I was like, what's going on right now?
No, and I went back to sleep after that, and then I woke up, and you're like, hey, do you hear that? There's something in the water. Because we can see the river. We're right there.
Yeah.
I mean, what, like 15 feet from
Yeah.
the bank?
Yeah.
And you're like, it's a deer looking at us.
Well,
Or something. A deer or a bear. I don't know.
hang on a second. Okay, so in Kansas, I've camped out in Kansas by myself. I've done my fair share of camping. We don't have big predators. Occasionally, there's reports of mountain lions and stuff like that. But Missouri has bears. I know they're only black bears. I know people don't typically get attacked, right?
Yeah.
But there's still bears, and we had food out. I don't know. It's just a nerd me, to an extent. And
I put all the food up just so you know before I went to bed.
well, that doesn't surprise me. Good job. I think I'm glad somebody did.
Minus the corn that I forgot about that was burnt in the fire.
That was my fault too. So I don't know. I could have swore I heard something walking the water. That's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah.
Because you got the regular ripples, and it sounded like when I was walking through the water. That's the sound I was hearing. And then like I look out of my hammock and I see like a black mass like out in the middle of the river. Which in hindsight, there's too much current there for there to be anything standing. But it looked to me like a deer or bears, but it looked like it was moving. And so I was kind of like, you kind of have flashlights. And that's why I woke you up. And I'm like, hey, shine your light out there. And then when you shine the light out there, it disappeared. So I'm like, all right, I must be seeing things. And then the following morning, when I woke up, and I didn't say anything to Nick till later because I was a little embarrassed. But there was like a dead twig with some leaves hanging down in the exact spot where I seen this deer/bear, and it must have been moving because of the wind or something, or my imagination. But
Yeah, and that's what I figured it was when I looked out there. I was like, okay, I think this is probably what he's seeing, but I'm not going to say that. Like, I'm like, I don't see anything. I think we're all right. Yeah, and then I also woke up, I'm like kind of whatever, like lightly sleeping, and hear one of you guys make a noise. And I couldn't tell if it was you or Jim, but I'd hear one of you guys make a noise and I'd go, what? What's up? Was the response. So somebody else snored, and I thought that they said something to me, and I was like, oh dang it. And that happened like probably 2 or 3 times throughout the night.
yeah, that's weird. My wife says the same thing.
You're talking in your sleep. You remember that boulder or whatever, that big splash?
Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah.
So we're sitting there like getting ready to cook dinner, and hear this, huge like kersploosh splash out in the middle, like just right at the base of the ripples right where we're camping, and nothing came up. Like there's a cliff there, so I don't know if like a rock fell and kicked off, but it was really far back.
Yeah, the cliff was far back at that point. I mean, there are like sheer cliffs along the whole river, but at that point they were a little far back, and this seemed like it came from the tree that was overhanging the river.
Yeah.
And it was huge.
But the tree wasn't shaking. It didn't sound to me at all like a fish. You didn't hear beforehand that kind of telltale like of them breaching the water, where you excuse me, a lot of times you'll hear, with their tail or whatever coming up through the water. No, it was just the big splash, and there wasn't anybody else around us that could have thrown something.
Yeah, and I don't think it was a beaver either, because a beaver usually get that whoosh when they lift their tail up, and it's like a slap.
Right.
This sounded like a giant rock hitting the water or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
But
weird.
it was I don't know. Everything leading up to the point of me waking up seeing a bear in the river kind of like set me up for that hallucination, I think.
Yeah.
That's my only excuse.
It was interesting, and then so we're sitting around. Jim's fishing a little bit, made breakfast. You caught that one trout, and then some people came, and all the jet boats started.
That was insane.
Like from that point on, it was a constant parade of jet boats of people going up and down the river, and somebody caught a fish out of our hole right there as we're like sitting there making breakfast, taking a break from fishing. I was like, oh, dang. Like drifting down with like corn, like chumming with corn, and then throwing out treble hooks.
Yeah, that was something I did not expect to see.
No.
We were sitting, they came and caught a fish, in the hole we were sitting in. We weren't fishing at the time, so it's like, you can't blame them too much. But then, they float downriver, and then they come back up, and the guy driving the boat, like I see him like sprinkle some stuff out one side of the boat, and then sprinkle some stuff out the other side, and it was like bright orange things.
Mm-hmm.
And then the four of the guys in the boat, a couple of them were kids. They started throwing their lines in, and I looked over at you, and I'm like, they chumming? And you're like, they're chumming. Like at the same time, you're like, they're chumming. You're like, I just didn't even expect that. Like,
no, the only time I've ever fished that way was for carp out of a farm pond. Yeah, when I was in high school, and it was fun to fish that way for them because they put up a good fight. But yeah, like we're out here trying to catch trout on the fly, and you see what is not really regarded as a very challenging way to fish. It was very unexpected. And also unexpected is we finished up dinner or breakfast, and we're all sitting there fishing, and Jim's like, whoa, I think there's a fish. There's a fish. A huge fish, dude. A huge fish. And I'm like, I start kind of making my way that way. I was like, oh, well, cool. What is it? He goes, I think it's a trout. It's picking the chum up off the bottom. And I come over there, and there is a monster rainbow that is dying. I don't know what happened to it, if somebody caught it that morning and let it go and it just didn't revive well. But it was, it was up in the shallows, like not able to swim. Yeah, it was just like on its side, up, upside down.
Upside down, kind of like trying to swim and just hit the bottom. I think that's why he thought it was eating, because it was just kind of swimming, hit the bottom, and just floating around.
Yeah, and we tried to revive it, and there was nothing doing it.
Yeah, it was, that thing was huge. What do you think that thing weighed? It was a good,
probably 3-4 pounds.
Yeah,
which for a trout, that's a big fish.
Yeah,
and
it was good, at least 18-20 inches.
Yeah, I'd say so. Say so. We didn't measure it or anything, but it was a big fish. As good or better as I've ever seen anybody catch down around there.
It was cool because the ones that we caught were 8-10 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool to catch them, but to see that there's actually fish that big. Because the ones they stock are 13 inches, and so there's just to know that they're they're in there growing and they're getting that big.
Yeah,
it was really cool to just to see that that's actually happening there.
That is really cool. I would imagine it's the same as at some other places where they stock. So a lot of what they stock will be the 13 inches, and they'll throw in a couple of big mature fish too. So it could be that, but. They haven't stocked since the spring, at least from my understanding of this place. So that fish has survived, or had up until that point, for months and months. And it wasn't thin, like it was a healthy fish. As far as I could tell anyway. But so then had that happen, and then got everything packed up and started heading down, dodging jet boats and fishing our way along.
Real quick, that I could tell you're really uncomfortable with that fish dying. Like, and then you also, when we were eating the fish that I caught, which I said, if I'm gonna catch fish, I want to eat it. You were like, you didn't feel comfortable with that per se. Like I could tell you there was emotion there about, the other fish dying and me eating this one.
It's so I've killed trout and eaten them. I enjoy that, it's a weird thing because catch and release fishing comes with a certain level of attrition.
Mm-hmm.
You're killing fish even if you let them go, especially if you're catching fish with the water temperatures up at all or in stressful environments. If you fight that fish for very long at all, the chances of that fish making it aren't good in a lot of places anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you work so hard to catch a fish, especially trout on the fly. You know, I can go out to a farm pond and just stack bass like cordwood at different, you know, at certain times. Other times you go out and you have a rough time, but the pursuit of catching trout on the fly, at least for me, you know, it's been a very steep learning curve, and there have been a lot of times where I've gone out and had little to no success. And so those moments when you catch them, like they kind of hold some weight, and some of that weight transfers to that fish. And so there's just something about trout that I hold in high regard.
Yeah.
And so when I handle and eat something like that, there's a heaviness that comes with it. And when we cook the trout, I was full. And when I'm hungry, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But when I'm full, like I enjoyed eating that. It was really tasty, but I had, you know, a couple bites and I was like, I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, hey, help me eat this thing. You know, we're not letting any of it go to waste. So I'm full too. I'm like, I will, but it might upset my stomach a little bit. It's hard for me to describe.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm good. I don't want to, I don't know. Like I said, it's kind of an odd thing. But I also didn't grow up eating wild game. You know, that was not part of my childhood. And so it has taken me a little bit to adjust to that. There's, you know, weird mental and emotional hang-ups with that at times. It's something that I want to make sure is not an issue for my son. He eats a lot of wild game, and we do in our house too. But it's weird how it'll catch you sometimes. And that was a moment that I was like, I'm like legitimately full enough where I don't want to eat anything else. Like if I was eating eggs, I'd probably be sick too. But yeah, the trout wasn't something I wanted to eat a bunch of. And it was your fish too.
Yeah.
Like if it was my fish and I killed it, like it would be a little bit different. But I was like, I want him to enjoy as much of it as possible also.
I wasn't heartsick about you turning it down because, you know, that just means more for me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just found that interesting, and you know, I can relate to it.
Yeah. Well, and with that fish dying too, you know, I don't know what caused it, but I have a hunch that somebody hooked into that fish and released it that morning from the way it was acting. Like fish typically don't look really healthy and no outward signs of anything wrong with it, and float down the river and not be able to. And then die, you know, a few minutes later. Like that doesn't happen. I think somebody wore that fish out, and that's a real bummer because they're such beautiful fish, and that's why catch and release fishing, I love it, and I really enjoy doing it. But there's that dirty little secret that you're running the risk of killing something.
Yeah.
For no other reason than your own self-gratification.
Yeah.
I mean, you're poking holes in stuff's lips for the fun of it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's darn good fun.
Yeah.
But it's not as harmless as some people would let you believe it to be. And that was a shining moment of like, oh yeah, this comes at a cost.
Yeah. Yeah, my first thought was maybe he got hit by a boat because we had just, at that point, we just seen a bunch of motorboats come by.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, because I wasn't aware of that. But because, like you said, it was in really good health. I mean, that thing was fat.
Yeah.
It was a big fish.
Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't any outward signs of trauma or anything. I mean, it's always possible, but like I said, I just have a hunch that that's not what happened to it. But it was an interesting start to our morning, and you know, you catching that one and getting to eat it, that was good. I know that was something you really wanted to do, so I was really happy that happened.
Yeah. Well, that first one I caught, we were in the first part of the blue ribbon part of it, so it had to be 18 inches for you to keep it.
Right.
But it was it was a smaller fish, and I was happy to let it go. I was happy to see it swim off just because I got to catch a trout.
Yeah.
And but then once we got into that second part, I'm like, if I catch one, I'm gonna eat it because there's no size limit, and it was just something really cool to do because I've eaten fish, but growing up in Kansas, you only get fish, in my opinion, crappie or sunfish, and I'm not a big fan of bass or catfish, so being able to eat that nice, fish.
What kind of catfish have you tried?
Just flatheads. Well, channel cats too when I was a kid, but I'm just now learning how to cook wild game. I mean, I know that there's a process of cooking catfish. I've had catfish in a restaurant. It's just bland to me.
It's not good.
Yeah,
I don't like catfish that much in a restaurant. But Devin's, my wife, her family are big catfish people, and so like every year they get together around the 4th, and a lot of times the uncles and stuff who have caught catfish through the year will save it up and bring it to that, and it's as good as any other fish.
Really?
It's just you have to process it the right way, get the fat off of the fillet, because that's what holds the money taste. And flathead are really, really good table fare if they're handled right.
Yeah. Well, the more research I do on cooking wild game, especially fish, the more I realize how you got to do it right. Like especially like with duck. I eat a lot of duck because I hunt ducks with falcons, and it's like you gotta do it right. If you cook it like you would a pork steak, it's gonna be terrible. And I just I'm not against trying some catfish and stuff like that again, cooking it myself and doing it the right way. But as a kid, I would go catch catfish and we'd try to eat it, and it was terrible. It tasted like mud.
Yeah. And those skills are not always intuitive, and so it does take time, and a lot of other people that have gone before you to teach you those things. It is really helpful, which is one of the reasons why me and Graham are kind of setting ourselves up to try and at every single year at least one person get them introduced to hunting and take them out and help them along the path to developing those long-term skills, not just taking them out one time. Yeah. Because I think it's really important that people get out there and see what nature really has to offer. Yeah. At least for me, it's been a huge part of my life and something I've benefited greatly from, and I want other people to have that experience.
Yeah. Well, like you, I didn't grow up. Neither one of my parents were hunters. I had a friend who I went with him and his dad to go duck hunting, and it's I had I don't have a background in that kind of stuff.
Right.
So just like this kind of thing, you bring me out here and kind of setting everything up to do some trout fishing has been it's made me want to do more stuff. It's like at the end of this float, it was a blast of a weekend, and wasn't we didn't catch any 18 inchers, but we caught fish and we had fun and ate some good food and had some good conversations. But now like I want to go to Wyoming or Idaho and like catch some true wild native trout and do that kind of thing like we were talking about.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna get something in the works, man. I want to go do something out west where hopefully we can take a week and do fly falcons, hunt over the dogs, and fly fish. That's my goal this year. Yeah. Is to do something, all three of those in one trip.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to be a part of it. That would be a blast.
Yeah.
And Graham too, I guess, if he doesn't wuss out again.
Is he still a hunter and fisherman and falconer, or is he just
know. I think he's just a poser.
Just a poser, yeah. It happens.
I think he just scoops that game up off the road and lets his falcon sit on it.
We can edit this part out, right? You can edit this part out, right? Send it straight to Grant.
Yeah. Yeah. So then once we got underway, I think in the pool right below the ripple where we were camping, I caught one.
Yeah.
We were getting ready to go into the next ripple.
Yeah.
And I'd cast it out a few times, and I was retrieving the line back onto the reel to get it all wrapped up so that we could go through the ripples so I could paddle and set the rod down so it was safe because you'd I guess you hadn't broken your rod at that point because you broke it whenever after I got mine.
That was the next one, I think.
I think it was when I got
mine.
mine.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, yeah.
So I just whatever. I had been doing that all day where I try and get the line all buttoned up before we go in it so it's not a tangled mess the next pool or whatever. And I'm just reeling it back, and a trout takes it, about halfway back to the boat, and landed that guy. Let him go. Nice, I don't know, probably 12, 13-inch rainbow, something. And in the process, snap the tip of your fly rod off.
Yeah.
We were like the pool that we were in had sheer cliffs on one side, and a little bit of slack water up against those cliffs, and we kind of swung into that so we could land the fish safely. And in the process, the tip got caught on the cliff wall and broke off, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's okay. It didn't make my cast any worse.
It didn't improve it either.
Did not. But we landed. You landed the fish. It was pretty cool. And those cliffs there, like I don't know if that's granite or what, but it's like
I don't know.
It's sheer and it's really cool because when you're coming up on it, like there's just ferns and everything on this wall, and I just was not. As I was trying to row us back into that place, because you had fish in one hand and you're pulling the other, I set mine down facing forward and just didn't even think about it. And we were trying to get us up against that so we could slow down, you can land the fish, and we can get a cool selfie. And the tip caught it, and it is what it is. But it wasn't the worst pole accident of the day.
No, that came later. Good excuse to upgrade.
Yeah. Which
you just gotta get a nicer one now.
Yeah, that's just fine. Yeah,
yeah. So then we kept on floating down, trying to make sure that Jim was okay, because we'd fish a pool, and then we'd look over there, and Jim is just sitting in his boat or in his canoe, not paddling,
not fishing,
staring off on the bank all the way through the pool. We get down towards where he was, and we're like, "Are you okay?" Yeah, good, having a great time.
Yeah, genuinely, he's like, I'm just enjoying this nature. I like watching you guys catch fish.
It was just a funny sight because we'd be fishing, we'd look over, and he's just kind of floating along there, just being happy. The rest of the float wasn't as eventful because we got a few follows back to the boat, or close enough where we could see on. I think you had one or two on your spin caster, and I think I maybe had one or two on. I think I was throwing the spin caster, and I got a couple follows from like one bass and maybe one trout, but didn't get any commitments on those. I think that was the last fish we caught, and kind of fished our way down. And as we're going along, the river kind of mellowed out a little bit in large part. There was a few good ripples here and there, but in large part it kind of flattened out a little bit and calmed down. And we just came through this ripple, and we float past this big brown thing, and you're like, that was a fish. And I looked at it, I was like, dude, that was a log. What are you talking about? And you're like, no, that was a fish. I'm pretty sure it was a trout. And so
I got offended. I was offended that you're like, no, that's a log.
Well, okay, to be fair, you had said there's a fish here at one point, and it was grass, which, I mean,
it looked fishy. It looked like a fish.
It can be really deceiving that you look down and there's a piece of grass that's the perfect shape of a fish, and it's waving back and forth in the current. You know, it really makes it look like there is a fish there. But so we're like, okay, well, if it was a fish, then that was a huge fish. Let's go look at it. So we go by, and sure enough, I mean, if it was a trout, I don't know. I didn't get a great look at it. I got a good look at the tail, and it was the shape of a trout tail for sure. Like, I don't know what else is in that river that would be that big.
Yeah.
But no joke, the biggest trout I've ever seen. Even the stuff at Bass Pro, like, dwarfed those fish. Like, I don't know what the state record rainbow is, but this fish would give it a run for its money.
Yeah. Oh, and it was,
or not rainbow, state record trout.
yeah.
I don't know if it was a brown
it seemed darker. It was a darker color, but and it wasn't that deep. It definitely was not, a catfish. The only thing it could have possibly been was a carp, but it was not like yellow. I'm not familiar with carp down here, but carp I see are like yellow or golden or they're light colored. This was a darker colored
and
fish.
And same with buffalo
and
suckers. They're that kind of yellow golden color.
It
was dark like the back of a trout.
It moved fast. Like when we came past, it spooked and just kind of like. Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, you can go look at the video version of this podcast. I'm going to hold my hands up and show an approximation of what I can tell that fish to be. And this, it was, every bit probably 3 feet long.
Yeah.
Like not joking, a monster fish.
Yeah.
And again, not positive that it was a trout, but whatever it was, that was a big fish.
Well, the first time we passed it, when I seen it, it was just kind of cruising upstream, and it was very streamlined, and like when you said, "Oh no, it's just a log," like I was like in the back of my mind, I'm second guessing because it was.
You got a much better look at it.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no way that's a fish, just based off of the size of what I was looking at, and there were weeds where we were at that looked similar to fish that we had just been past. So I was like, no.
You gave me that same look right there.
No, but it was a fish, man. You were definitely right, and I ate my crow. You were right.
Yeah.
And that was really cool to get to see that. And as we kind of went along further on, we were trying to fish deeper and find the spots, and we kept getting snagged. And at one point, Chris got snagged real bad on something down, like in a part that was moving fairly fast. Didn't flip the bail on his pole, set it down to try and when you get snagged, a lot of times you're getting snagged upstream of where you're at, and so you gotta row and get back upstream of it, and usually if you do that, it comes loose. At the very least, you don't want to just keep drifting downstream because you're gonna just get further and further, and it's not gonna pop off or whatever it's hung up on doing that. And when he did that, or when he didn't flip the bail open, rod got pulled out of the canoe. He almost followed it, tipped it so much that like the lip of the canoe started going under. I lean over hard the other way and get it pulled up, and I could have reached, but I was like, if I reach, like this whole canoe's going over. So we let it go down. You said you saw it a couple times. The water was like so murky there that in that particular spot we just couldn't see the bottom.
Yeah, we worked our way up there like 3 or 4 times. The first time we worked our way upstream and then came back to where I thought it was. I seen it, but it's like, the only thing I could have done was bail off the canoe at that point, and it wasn't an option. And then we kept looking for it a little longer and just never seen it. But we kept getting snagged on these rocks. The rocks there are just brutal. Like there's a lot of like crevices and stuff. When you're walking through it, walking through the rocks to get into a good casting spot, like you're slipping, and there's big rocks and little rocks, and I snagged or caught rocks at least 2 or 3 times. Just little rocks that came up on my fly.
Yeah.
There's something about the geography there. So I got snagged on a rock previous to me losing my rod, and I didn't open the bail. I just kind of let it. I had my what is that thing where you like loosen it and tighten it?
Drag.
The drag. Sorry. I had my drag kind of set where it would pull it out, while we were kind of floating downstream, trying to work our way back up to get out the snag.
Yeah.
And I'd set my pole down. It was the boat would kind of keep it. Well, when I lost my pole, I did the same thing, but we were kind of at an angle where it kind of slid, along the side of the boat, because I had let go of it to grab my paddle so I could, help paddle us back upstream,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just slid right off. And like you said, I almost dumped us. And
I was worried about you too. That was a dangerous section to try and I'm glad we didn't end up having to, but to try and be in that swimming would have been a problem because it was, I don't know what, like 4+ foot deep and pretty quick current. So it's hard to get stopped whenever you're going and unpredictably. I mean, like rocks the size of a man, like big boulders there. It would have been rough.
Yeah, I'm in hindsight, I'm glad I did not get in the water, because I kept debating on whether I should just swim out there and try to, because it was probably 4 feet deep when I seen it. There was that little section of rocks there where I got snagged up on. But it's
thankfully it wasn't that expensive of a rod.
It wasn't. It was a cheapo rod that I bought just for the trip, but it was
still, you don't
it was kind of a bummer, because we were kind of towards the end of the float, and I know Jim was done fishing. I feel like you were done fishing, and I was
I was getting there.
Yeah, I was in front of the boat, so you're kind of steering, and I'm just kind of casting.
Yeah, which I try to do that for you, because I was really hoping that you were going to catch one on the fly on this trip. So I was trying to be a guide, and I probably should have done that a little bit more and given you a better opportunity. But I'm a little greedy. I want to fish too.
I had plenty of opportunities, but.
Well, I watched you and Jim cast and fish some, and you and I, and hopefully Graham, because he's a lot more well versed and articulate in being able to convey things to people that are just starting. We need to take a trip to the Naingua or somewhere where you can get a lot of casting practice, because it's really difficult in places that you've never been, and when you're fairly inexperienced at fly fishing, to catch anything because even a hook set is tough at times, depending on where you're at. And so if you don't get that many opportunities to try that, because you're not in the strike zone as much, because your casting isn't all that it could be, it makes the odds of you actually bringing a fish to the net pretty slim. And one thing that I was benefiting from that you guys were struggling with is being able to cast a little bit farther so that I could cover more water. And so that's something that we need to take if it's something you want to do, take some time to put a little bit of oomph in your cast so that you can cover a little bit more water and up those odds of, oh, hey, there's a seam that's just a little bit too far for me to wade out to. I need to be able to cast far enough so that I can get upstream enough to get it down to where the fish would be, and keep it there long enough to increase the odds of me actually hooking up. Because if you can't cast far, or as far as you need to, you either have to wade out further, which is tough, and a lot of places it just is not possible, or you're not getting to where the fish are. And you might be in the strike zone of a fish, but it's not enough of a time, or of a percentage to bring it to the net, basically, where the odds aren't in your favor. And so that's one thing that I've benefited from over the past few years, is I've gone, a trip here, a trip there, a trip here, so that my casting is far from perfect, but I can get it out there if I need to, and fish a lot of water that way that you guys were struggling with a little bit, that I probably should have taken a little bit. The problem is I don't know what I'm doing, and it's hard for me to tell you what to do when I'm not exactly sure what you're doing wrong. I did tell Jim something that helped him, and then he stopped doing it. Which I meant to ask him about that if there was a reason for it, but he was like casting in kind of a circular motion, which, I mean, it reduces, I guess, some of the length of your back cast if you've got stuff behind you, but you're creating a bunch of additional drag vectors. You want it to be all linear. You want your fly rod to follow the same path so that those loops stay in line with each other, so you're not having all this drag from the side. It's all going in the same line, and that you can cast that way like he was, but doing that and being able to actually shoot a bunch of line out so that you can get some distance on the cast, it just doesn't work well. But I was having to relearn how to roll cast where we were at fishing off of our campsite, which I haven't done in a long time, because we had all that foliage and stuff right behind the camp there.
Yeah, I did learn a lot of new things, and just how to fish in a river, using nymphs and streamers and stuff like that. So it was really beneficial, even though I didn't catch a trout or anything. Well, caught minnows, but anything, I didn't catch a trout on a fly rod. Just learning, those basics is really helpful, and I feel a little more confident, and definitely need to work on casting, and I'd love to come out and fish some of these other rivers. And
you're welcome like anytime, man. I'm really hoping that we get to see some more of each other through the summer here. Yeah, because there's lots of opportunities to go on little adventures like that, even if it's you come down, crash for a night, and then we just go fish the Niangua for the morning, or half the day or whatever, and then call it a day. But being consistent and getting out there and doing it multiple times, you'll find it, like, you build those skills pretty quickly, a whole lot faster than just doing it here and there, once a year or whatever. And it's really frustrating at first because you don't know what you're doing wrong, and then you start kind of putting some pieces together. It's more enjoyable, although it also can be frustrating at times whenever you feel like you're doing everything right, or at least somewhat right, and you still not catching anything because who knows why, but the bite's not hot at that moment, I guess.
Well, I found it interesting, like, I kept coming back to why am I using a fly, because I spent 90% of the time fly fishing, throwing nymphs, throwing streamers, and the other 10% that I wasn't, I was using my spin caster with a little rooster tail, and that's when I caught fish. It's like, and then we've seen those guys chumming and using power bait or whatever it was, and they were catching fish, and it's like, why am I quote unquote wasting my time doing this? But then I came to the realization, those guys are just out here doing it just to catch fish. Like, it's easy to do it like that. It's just like in falconry, there's always that escalation, in difficulty that you strive for,
Sure.
So.
Yeah, it's along a similar vein of why I'm drawn to long wings, and I think you are too, is the challenge of it. There's something about those difficult pursuits that add value, and I also really enjoy learning. We talked about this the other night, where it's like there's just something about coming into something as an apprentice, as somebody at the ground level, and working your way up, and those difficult pursuits that take time. When you really get to the place that you have a good, firm understanding of that, or a high level of ability, those are pretty powerful things in your life. And for me, they've helped shape who I am, bow hunting, falconry, even other forms of fishing too, that I've done in the past that aren't easy to get right and to find success in. And fly fishing is definitely among those things. It's super challenging. I don't feel like I have a good grasp on it. I have a lot to learn, but I enjoy it. It's really fun, and I've resisted it at first. I had a fly rod ever since high school, but Graham started getting into it, and he kept trying to talk me into it. I'm like, dude, I need to be weeding out hobbies, not adding to it. And he talked me into it, and just as I knew that I would, it's become a passion of mine. And one other thing about fly fishing over spinning gear is it does give you an ability to fish different stuff as well.
Yeah.
Like you can't cast a nymph with a spinning rod.
Yeah.
Not easily anyway, and not of any length. You can do it with a fly rod, and in certain areas that's a very effective way to fish.
Yeah.
So it's not all just because of the challenge. You can do different presentations that you simply can't do with a spinning rod, but it is definitely more challenging. And it's kind of, why I enjoy like bow hunting over rifle hunting. Like you have to be doing more things right for it all to come together, unless you're just lucky. Like that one of me reeling in. Like I wasn't even fishing. I was just trying to get the line back on the reel so we could not capsize. But it was there anything else that happened that we wanted to talk about?
No, I mean, on a lower note, the disappointing end of our float with all the motorboats.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. It was this weird. Is this weird like crescendo?
Yeah.
We start out, we're the only truck in the parking lot, and there's nobody else around, nobody else on the river for the first like hour plus.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
And then there's one guy here, one guy there. Oh, look at that guy. He's got a dog on his boat that's about 2 inches from taking on water. And so it's like, man, how fun is this? And then we start seeing a few more people in kayaks and canoes, and it was no big deal.
And then we tried to find a camping spot.
Yeah.
And we had already passed that first one, and it was like they were just completely full up.
Yeah, and then we passed 30 drunken frat guys on an island. We're like, okay, well, at least we're past them. Yeah. And then it just kept more people and more people and more boats until we get to the takeout, and literally the entire shore is full of canoes that people have brought and rental canoes. Mm-hmm. I don't know, probably 50, 60 people.
Yeah.
Sitting on the bank with a rope swing off the tree, and we're like, man, this is like it's not what we expected. No. At the takeout compared to where we put in at. Which, I mean, I guess probably a lot of people don't put in at Greer because there's a lot of dangerous rapids and stuff up above that. I mean, I say dangerous. Like, in most places, it's like 6 foot deep in the rapids at the deepest.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of places, it's a lot less than that. So,
and Jim didn't seem to have that much of an issue getting through them.
No.
But he was one guy, and he had a couple buckets of stuff. He was really lightweight,
Yeah.
Where we were, what do you call a battleship, trying to steer these little channels. But I mean, it was precarious at least.
Yeah.
But it was just at that, I think one of the last places we tried to actually fish, a little at the bottom end of some little rapids.
Mm-hmm.
We were sitting there fishing, and 2-3 boats go by, and we then we're dealing with 2-foot wakes hitting us while we're sitting there trying to fly fish. It just kind of took from the
experience.
Thank you.
Yeah. And after the second or third one went by, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Yeah, I felt the exact same way. I looked over at you and I started reeling my pull up. You started reeling your line in, and you were like, "All right, we're getting out of here."
Yeah. Yeah, and at that point, it's like, okay, there's too much. We're not catching anything. I don't, it's hard telling. There could have been 150 trout down there for all I know, but it just didn't feel that way. I was like, I don't feel like, I feel like the best is behind us. Let's just head on down and call it a day before we're all too frustrated to talk to each other.
Yeah, that top half, that top 2/3, or the 2/3 of the top half, there was really good area. I wish we would have spent more time up there.
Same.
And maybe found a place to camp out up there, and a little quieter place, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, the spot we camped was perfect, man. It was good. It was quite enjoyable until the people interrupted us. But at that point, it was already kind of late in the morning. We had slept in a little bit.
Yeah.
I had a really great time, man. Any closing remarks or anything?
I mean, I just, I appreciate you inviting me out here. It's been a real adventure. Something I hope to do again in the future. It was fun.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to plan an annual thing.
Yeah, definitely.
At least. And
absolutely.
Like I said, I sincerely hope we get to spend some more time together this summer, and definitely this fall. We're gonna have to do some hawking together.
Yeah, definitely, man. We got a couple peregrines, and there's gonna be a lot of ducks to slay, I hope.
Yeah, if I can get her to cooperate, fingers crossed.
That's what you get.
February can't come here soon enough.
That's what you get for trapping in tundra.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'll be lucky to fly by next fall at the rate that she's molting. Hopefully she'll be done in time to get going at a decent time. If not, I guess we'll be flying with some molting and feathers.
There you go.
We'll see.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. All right, man. Thanks for coming down, Graham. You missed out. Maybe next time if you're invited. Yeah,
we might let you catch a fish.
Yeah. Jim didn't catch anything. We gotta mention that.
Oh, you had to mention that?
Yeah, we gotta burn him a little bit. He from the get go, he's like, I'm not gonna catch anything. Don't stress about it. I'm like, that was my goal. That was the one goal that I didn't meet, is you catching something on the fly, and same with Jim. Yeah. I caught a couple, and I felt lucky to have caught those. Like, if I wouldn't have caught anything, I would have felt bad. I didn't want to get skunked, because I know Graham went out there and got skunked. So I was like, I got to at least catch one. When I caught that one, the pressure's off. It was a great time, and we'll have to do it again for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening, guys, and happy hawking.